Okay, I'm going to start my introduction. That gives people another couple of minutes to join. When I was preparing this PowerPoint, I realized that this is actually our third birthday. So our first presentation was in September 2020. And we've never missed a month. Okay, so our September meeting 2023. Speaker today is Mohan Balendra, who will talk to us about property, land and property in the Northern Province. So, as usual, I'll quickly go through our objective. The club will facilitate, foster and support social intercourse and fellowship amongst its members. It will build a network of members and non-members that can work together to promote the economic development of the Northern. The club is a catalyst to help people like us connect with each other, help people like us connect with Northern entrepreneurs and business opportunities. I say it's a catalyst because the club itself doesn't invest, doesn't build an empire. It's just here to help people network, make connections. Our first speaker was in September 2020, so it's now 3 years we've been doing this. And I'll slowly page through this so people who are perhaps watching the Zoom for the first time can see sort of people we've had speaking to us. Audible consent, so people can watch this more slowly. We had a wide range of senior people active in the North. Okay, so now we'll move straight on to Mohan. Mohan, do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, I just quickly explain. So work had taken me somewhere where the signals are quite patchy, so I recorded my presentation before I left Colombo. So I'm going to try to see whether I can upload it and play the video, and then take the questions later on. I think we wouldn't need video. Just hold on, please. I'm going to try to share my first. I broke the video into two because of the sheer size, so I'm just going to play the first one.
Sure. I myself, I've been here since 2015, and I've been involved in property issues for my own family and people who've contacted me. They range from ownership on questions about Thesavalamai law. People are confused about rights of non-Tamils to own property in the north, prescriptive rights, particularly during the war, when deeds have been lost, creating deeds by declaration, what it is to own permit land, buying and selling of land, whether foreigners are allowed to own land, and the fact is foreigners are allowed to inherit land without paying any what's involved in selling land, gifting land, and many other issues. Even finding land, people who own land, to locate where it actually is after a 30-year war, where boundaries have shifted, has been an issue. So many people have spoken with me about that, and it is a major task dealing with lawyers, dealing with kacheri. Deeds have been lost. Some of my own family's deeds were lost because of flooding in the kacheri years ago. I've been told that deeds before 1960 or 1970, which were kept in boxes at the lower shelves in the Jaffna Kachari, were damaged during floods at some stage or another. So the whole property issue is far more complicated than it should be.
Again, just to add here, the Klinochi Kacheri was completely bombed. So all the deeds which were there were gone. I mean, I just wanted to get a history of my deed, and I went there. And what they gave me is a piece of paper which says that this office was bombed and all the deeds. So we do not have history. So,
yeah.
So.
Okay, so Jagan, I upload the video. I couldn't. For some reason, it's not allowing me to. So I'm going to keep the video off, and I'll just read off the notes I did. I mean, what I have done is just to give you a brief outline on Thesavalamai's applicability, the preemption.
Could you put your video on? It would be good if you put your video on, if that's possible.
Okay. Hold on. Yeah, I'll do that. Give me a second.
You can also play your video on your computer and share it. You don't have to kind of send it to Jagan.
Yeah, yes.
I was trying to upload the video to Zoom, like a share content, but it's not letting me do it. Is there another way of doing it? I am not aware.
But what if you just play it in your laptop and share the screen?
Share the screen. Okay, hold on. Please.
Well, Mohan, if you want to just speak and don't worry about your video. So even if we won't have the pleasure of seeing your face. Where deeds have been lost, we are also in the same position. There's a piece of land which was owned by my grandmother. Deed is lost, so we are now trying to create a deed by declaration. And as I understand, the lawyer I've spoken with, which is not Mohan, but a local Jaffna lawyer, that the deed can be created, but for 10 years it can be disputed. So if you try and sell that property, and whoever would bear that in mind.
I just read it, Jagan. So thanks, Jagan, for the introduction, and welcome all. So as Jagan said in his introductory email, there is much misinformation, misunderstanding, and misconception about property law in the North, especially Thesavalamai. Thesavalamai is one of the 3 main customary laws that are currently operational in Sri Lanka. The other 2 are Kandyan law and Muslim law. The rest is all covered by general law. These 3 customary laws operate within a strict the parameters set by the respective laws. So what really is Thesavalamai? Let me quote from and paraphrase an article that appeared in the Sunday Times a few years ago. This was written by a senior lawyer called Mr. C.B. Vivekanandan, whom I enjoyed chatting, because he used to give me perspectives and give history of how things evolved in Sri Lanka. And when this issue of preemptive rights came up, he thought it was necessary that he needs to clear the air, and he wrote an article on the Sunday Times a few years ago. He's no more, but I think, and he's also done it in everyday language. So I thought I'd just read some parts of it, which actually explain what Thesavalamai is. So Thesam means state or nation. Valamai is custom. That's the term. Thesavalamai means customs of the state or nation. So these customs are said to have originated in the on the Malabar coast of India. Thesavalamai is Dravidian in nature, but is unconnected to the Hindu law of India. With the passage of time, it got blended by the influence of Roman Dutch law and English law. Thesavalamai was partly written on Ola leaves, and the rest was carried on from one generation to other. And those days, it was the people who were called Mudaliyas who were learned in these customs, and they were called upon when there was questions as to applicability of and the operation of Thesavalamai. We really don't know when Thesavalamai started, but if we fast forward to 1505, when, with the introduction of Europeans into Sri Lanka, first it was the Portuguese who really paid no attention to the laws of the natives. The Dutch, on the other hand, came to believe that governance could be best carried out and their principle was that the natives should be governed according to the customs of the country if they were clear and reasonable. So they thus codified Thesavalamai. It was codified, so the process started in 1704, and it was it came into effect in 1708. First, it was codified in Dutch, and then it was translated to Tamil. So the classification that mentions there is the use of the word Malabar and Tamil, and over time, both the words denoted Tamil inhabitants from the northern province. In 1806, what was Ceylon then was handed over to the Brits, and regulation number 18 of 1806 came into being, which is the current code of Thesavalamai. So Thesavalamai is quite an extensive document. It's in nine parts, and it deals with several aspects, whether it's marriage, marital rights, guardianship, adoption, law of the parent, interstate succession, preemption, which is problematic, and even slavery, which thankfully was abolished in 1844. Unfortunately, the curse of casteism hasn't. So then the question arises as to who is governed by Thesavalamai. I'll just read this, which is probably explains it. So it's a section 2 of the Thesavalamai regulation. makes clear that applicability of Thesavalamai law is to Malabar inhabitants of the province of Jaffna. It is now established law that the words Malabar inhabitants means Tamil from the northern province and does not specifically connote Malabari origin. Decided case law finds that though in addition to the peninsula, Thesavalamai applied to say Tamils in Mana, but it didn't apply to Tamils in Trinco or in Batiklo or to the Tamils of Indian origin, whether they were living in the upcountry or in Kilinochchi as some of them did after the riots of 77 and 83. Again, Thesavalamai does not apply to all Jaffna Tamils, but only to those Tamil inhabitants of the Jaffna province. The word inhabitant is of the essence. There has been much judicial discussion on this concept. The dominant and settled view was articulated by Sharvananda J, who was the Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, in a case where he noted the rules used for identifying a person's domicile can be applied to discover whether a Tamil has permanent home in the northern province and hence is an inhabitant in the province. Thus, to be governed by Thesavalamai, a person must have a permanent home in the northern province. The rules used to identify a person's domicile can be applied to determine whether a Tamil has a permanent home in the northern province. Long residence out of Jaffna, even for many decades, does not necessarily deprive a person of their status as an inhabitant of Jaffna. That's the reason, even when people have lived overseas, there's confusion whether Thesavalamai law applies, whether you need to get the signature of the spouse, etc. There is a strong presumption in favor of the continuation of the inhabitancy of origin, and any change in permanent residency must be proved by clear intention and must be borne out by this principle without intention to return. It may also be noted, when a woman to whom Thesavalamai applies, a man to whom Thesavalamai does not apply, she shall not, during the subsistence of the marriage, be subject to Thesavalamai. On the other hand, if a lady who is not governed by Thesavalamai marries a man who is governed by Thesavalamai during the subsistence of the marriage, she is also subject to Thesavalamai. Then if you take Thesavalamai, there are three kinds of properties. One is Mudisam, this is hereditary property, and men who have this are free to deal with it the way they want and sell, gift, etc. Whereas Sidanam, the equivalent of ancestral property that is given to a woman, again, just like the man remains her own, and she is free to deal with the movables, but when it comes to immovables, she requires the consent of the husband. Hence the need, again, where when a lady who is of Jaffna origin or lives in Jaffna who wants to sell the property, the signature of the husband becomes important. The third category is Thirdiya Tirtham, which is a provision in law, in the Thesavalamai, by which if property is acquired by a spouse during the subsistence of marriage, the moment the property is bought, half of it devolves on the spouse, the other spouse, irrespective of the fact that the purchasing spouse paid for the entire property. However, you cannot, if you use the money that you got as your Sidanam or as Mudusam from your parents and you buy it, that is not Thirdiya Tirtham. And when it comes to Thirdiya Tirtham, the husband is free to sell it without the wife's consent, but the husband cannot gift it to anyone else. then the wife has the right to sue the husband for damages for her half share, though the gift does not become illegal. The donee will continue to will own the land along with the spouse, who would continue to own 50% of the property. So the other one is the most important preemptive right, which this has caused many a problem in Sri Lanka, and has led to the belief that non-Tamils cannot buy property in Jaffna, which is very, very far from the truth. The law provides there's only 2 instances where the right of preemption applies. That is where it's where a person who is a co-owner of the land has the preemptive right, or a person who is a co-owner and who could derive title from the current owner by the laws of intestacy, is also able to have preemptive right. That is to say, if Mr. X is a part owner and Mr. Y is a part owner, and if Mr. Y is, say, the nephew of Mr. X, and by the laws of intestacy, if he could claim from the estate of Mr. X, then he could use preemptive rights. Otherwise, no one else could use preemptive rights. So it's a very, very restrictive provision. Unfortunately, it is misunderstood and has given rise to various accusations. And if you read the book by Dr. H.W. Thambaiah, Queen's Counsel, who was the Chief Justice of this country, he even goes on to say that there's a wrong assumption that Thesavalamai is based on a homeland theory. And he also felt that because it's misunderstood, any attempts of devolving power to the north has also been affected, because people have assumed that that's just another step in excluding non-Tamils from those areas. But if you really understand preemptive rights, it's actually a good thing, in that if 2 people own the land together, then the person who's selling should first offer it to the other person rather than going to a third party, which I think a person of any race would find beneficial. Then the third one that I want to touch upon is the right of the effect of nationality on the right to own land in Sri Lanka. This is again another area where there's a lack of misunderstanding. And even now when I'm on this call, my office people are at another consultation where a person from deep down south has issues because her father had been misled to believe that because his daughter was a foreign passport holder, he could not have left any property for her in Sri Lanka. Therefore, he goes and leaves it to someone else. So he has been misled to believe that. So it's a common problem, not only in the north, but the rest of the country as well. So the law that actually governs or prevents foreigners from owning land in Sri Lanka came into effect in 2014, but with retrospective effect from the 1st of January 2013. It's called the Land Restrictions on Alienation Act number 38 of 2014. What it says is that the transfer of any title of any land situated in Sri Lanka shall be prohibited if such transfer is to a foreigner, to a company incorporated in Sri Lanka, where any foreign shareholding in such company, either directly or indirectly exceeds is 50 or more percent. And the third is a foreign company. Those are the only restrictions. There is a specific exemption for condominium property. There is also a specific restriction, exception, which let me read it. It says, this does not apply to the conveyance of any land, the title of which is transferred by intestacy, that is where a person dies without leaving a last will, gift or testamentary disposition to a next of kin, where a father or a mother leaves in her or his last will a property to a child who is foreigner by citizenship. So that is an exception. So any person is free to gift or leave in the last will, or even die without leaving last will, where the property would have, there'll be no issue for the property to pass on from the current owner to a foreign citizen, child, son, brother, uncle, nieces. I mean, there is a relationship that is specified, which includes descendants, ascendants, and collaterals. That is your children, your great children, and your great grandchildren. It can go up to 3 generations, and likewise your parents, your grandparents, and great grandparents. And collaterals are your brothers, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews, and even half-blooded brothers and sisters could also benefit irrespective of their citizenship. So there is actually there is a misnomer. There are a lot of Sri Lankan expats who are rushing to get dual nationality because they think they have to get dual nationality because some property is going to come to them. That is not required. That's what I prepared, Jagan. On you asked about loss of deeds. So a loss of deed is a huge issue, especially in the northern province, coupled with the land registry records, such as what was mentioned earlier, Kilinochchi, all getting destroyed. So if your deed is destroyed, you go to the land registry. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, land registry records go by what is known as volume and folio. So there are volumes which are usually marked by alphabets A to Z, and then folio numbers which go on to I think they hit about 1,000, 2,000 pages. So there is no way that there is no easy way to see whether a land is registered unless you have what is known as the prior registration. That is the exact page where a reference is made at the land registry to your land. So if you at least have one deed, or if your sibling happens to have a deed, and that his property and your property once formed a larger plot of land, you may be able to go to the land registry, work backwards in time to the time where they were one land, and then come down the stream of the ownership of the person who has lost his deed. There is also something called index search, where properties have been indexed in by their names. You know, Jaffna properties have names, Lakshmi Villas and that and this. So that is one way of doing it. If all else fails, you have to do a deed of declaration. But the issue with the deed of declaration is that it has also been used by people who really do not have title to claim title to properties. So we as lawyers, if we receive a deed of declaration, we are trained to look at it with suspicion. Is there anything else that you want clarified?
Okay, shall I open the floor if people have questions?
Can I ask a question? Is there a way you can trace the deed through the deed number? Some of the deeds have numbers. Is it possible?
No. So basically, a deed has three distinct markings. One is the deed number, the date, and the name of the notary. So we as notaries, so a person who is empowered to write a deed is a notary public, not an attorney at law. So when I started my practice, I started with number one, and I build. And each time I do a deed or an agreement, the numbers go up consecutively. So if, for instance, if you want to trace, if you know that the property was done by, say, my deed number 25 dated 25th of January to 1990, whatever, and you know my name, you need to find out, and there are ways of finding out where I am authorized to practice in Sri Lanka. So for me, for a person to practice as a notary, he has to have special license. The language in which he can write deeds is specified. The judicial zone in which he could practice is specified. Now, for instance, I can write deeds only in English and in Colombo. I can sit in Colombo and write a deed relating to a property in Jaffna, but I can't step out of Colombo judicial zone and go to Negombo and write a deed. I can't do that. So if you want to trace my deed, you will have to come to Colombo Land Registry, give the deed number, the date, and my name, and get a copy of my deed and see whether I have included the prior registration. That is the folio in which the property was at the time the client reached out to me for the document that I drew up. That is one way of tracing. And also, they changed the laws in November last year. Now, any deed that is written, any power of attorney that is written, has to have the prior registration. And the lawyer who does a deed or even a lease is required to carry out a search at the land registry and make sure the person who proposes of selling or leasing or mortgaging has title to the property that he wants to deal with, which is a good thing that has come about by this amendment last year. Does it answer your question?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Janan. Lasantha had his hand up first, and then Vasantha. So Lasantha, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned something about condominiums. I couldn't catch it. Is there a restriction on condominiums?
No, there isn't. So I said, unlike land, condominiums, there are no restrictions on foreigners purchasing. It's just that you need to show that money came in through legitimate channels into the country to purchase the apartment.
Yeah. So even non-Tamils, there is no restriction.
Non-Sri Lankans. Yeah, anyone can buy apartments anywhere in the country.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
So far as he or she is able to establish that the money came through the correct channels. There are certain accounts that you could open, or the money was generated in Sri Lanka by a sale of another asset, or as a gift received from a family, or as money earned in Sri Lanka. You can, so far as those boxes are ticked, a foreigner could purchase an apartment without a problem. There's no restriction on apartments at the moment. Land, of course, there is.
Okay, thank you.
So Vasantha, before Vasantha, I'm just going to say, Vince has put a message up, Vince Sinnadurai in Canada. He says, my father had 10 acres of land for kaju plantation. He didn't write his last will, but when Vince went to the Kacheri in Vavanya, they said, you're a Canadian citizen, therefore it's not possible first to obtain dual citizenship.
That's ill-informed. There is no as I explained earlier, I read out the particular part as well. This is a huge problem in Sri Lanka. The officers are not aware of the law. You don't have to be a Sri Lankan citizen or dual national to get what is legally due to you as an heir of a deceased person.
Okay, Vasanthan.
Hi, that's very useful information. But one thing I would ask, I don't know, it's not urgent, but it would be useful if you could kind of put together like a 1-pager or 2-page in simple blood points in terms of the Thesavalamai Chattam, because that's what very complicated and it's very difficult to understand for people. If there is a 1-pager with simple bullet points, just say what are the rights if somebody is a dual national, and what are the rights if somebody is an overseas citizen, or I mean, again, the Thesavalamai Chattam is like it gives different rights for men and women, right? So that's even makes it even more complicated. So if you can put together 1-pager, that would be very useful. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So those are two different issues. Thesavalamai is different from your right to receive what your parents leave for you, for instance. They're two different issues, but yes, we can do that.
Yeah, I think about what I was chatting with Jagan earlier. I think the issue we currently have is a lot of people have this overseas citizenship, but not many people know what their rights are. It just have something which is understandable, which is simple and straightforward in a very simple 2-page. That will be very helpful for a lot of people to kind of just kind of take the right direction.
Yeah. So usually people pay a lot of money for that kind of advice, but yes, we can do that.
Oh, okay. Because like whoever there was another person said is that they got to land somewhere 10 acres, and then when they go to this authorities and then they say you are an overseas citizen, you can't really do anything. That's so these things like that, people don't really understand these laws. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vasanthan. Jiva, you have your hand up.
I just have 2 quick questions, Mohan. This Thesavalamai law applies only for land in the northern province or in Jaffna for those who live in who have got some sort of Malabar ancestries, right? Just to clarify that.
No. If
I have land in Colombo.
No, it applies to land in Colombo as well. So far as you are governed by Thesavalamai, you have to you will be governed by, and if it's 30th term, you need your spouse's signature as well.
Yeah, so that's why it's very anti-gender, right? It's
yes, you know, in fact, during the
what about this female-headed households? I mean, you know, they must be having a lot of problems, right?
Yeah, but there is a provision in law where you can go to court and set out your circumstances and ask court, even if you are married and you're to a man who is governed by Thesavalamai and he's being difficult, there are provisions in the law for you to go to court and get that consent. But yes, it is a problem, especially I think it's especially it eats into women's rights because they have to get the consent of the husband
or male relative. Yeah, because I think in this post-conflict situation, this is one of the biggest impact on women in the northern province.
Yeah,
so I think this is something that Basil and people need to change, you know.
No, the problem is if we were to bring an amendment to the Thesavalamai Act in the Sri Lankan Parliament, I'm sure that may be exploited and other changes may be slipped in, and because we don't have the numbers in Parliament, we may not be able to stop it. So I think that's one of the reasons why our politicians have not moved for amendment of this act.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Shanthan.
Thank you, Jagan. My question is, you said something about 2014 land alienation law, where you cannot sell to foreign nationals. Am I right? I didn't catch that quite clearly.
Yes.
And
So
you also said it is retrospective. To which day?
it's an act that came out in 2014 during Mahinda Rajapaksa's time. I mean, we have had this earlier, then they removed it. So it came out in 2014 with retrospective effect from 2013, where they said that no land could be sold to a foreigner, basically. I mean, there are ways around it. That's the one that prevented it. So, so that is the law that this other gentleman said that is being used to ask someone from Canada to get dual nationality and come back. But that's not, that's wrong, because that act provides an exception to heirs of property owners to receive land irrespective of their nationality.
Yeah, so I understand that is for inheritance. And
Yeah.
For a person who wants to buy a land,
Mm-hmm.
it's not possible for a foreign national now.
No, not. So there are ways of doing it. So basically, you could form a company, and you can hold up to 49% of the shares, and you have a friend who owns the other 51%. So that's one way of.
Okay, so you cannot buy it as on your own as a private property.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
there are ways that people have found around it as always, but yes, the simple answer is no, you can't.
Okay, and those who bought before 2030?
No, their rights are not taken away. Oh no. But people who have
Thank
owned
you.
land, foreigners who are continuing, even if you go down south, there are lots of properties owned by foreigners. They are continuing to own. They are not. It has not been nationalized or anything like that. It's just that in 2014 they did it with effect from 2013. That is the only retrospective effect, and it's also for future transfers, not what has happened in the past.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mohan, there was a time, I think, when if a foreigner bought land, they paid 100% tax. Does that not apply?
No, so that's the one that was done away in 2004.
All right. Okay. So
Does
that also mean if a company owns land, then a foreigner can't buy that company? If the company already exists, it already owns land, foreigner can't buy
more than 49% of.
Okay.
Unless it's a public quoted company. Public quoted companies are exempted.
Interesting. Okay.
There was a time foreigners were looking for dormant public quoted companies, and they went for good prices.
One question on prescriptive rights.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of diaspora who haven't been back for many years. Are settled on their land. How does that work? Prescriptive
So
rights.
soon after the war ended, they had an act which stopped the functioning of prescriptive rights, the prescriptive period for a defined period of time that has come in. So it is an issue. If someone has come into your property and has held for 10 years straight without you having exercised any claim over the land, then theoretically they have the right to do a deed of declaration and declare themselves as the owner of the land.
All right. Thank you. Ananda.
But you can't have come as a tenant, right? And then say it's mine. I mean, there are exceptions there as well.
Right. Understood. Okay, Ananda.
Thank you for a very clear presentation. Question: if grandchildren of a large plot of land who inherited two different families, what is the preemption rights of one party stopping the other party from selling to outsiders?
No, so basically, so far as their names are on the deed as a co-owner, or the father dies and there is no last will, and automatically property devolves on the mother and the kids, right? And they all become co-owners. In that instance, if one co-owner wants to sell the land outside, say to a third party for a much higher price, the other co-owners can go and say, no, you need to sell it to us first. That's the only instance.
Okay, thank you. And Jahan, there's somebody has written a question on the chat box as well.
Okay.
So which one is that? Is that Vince's question?
Some Kaju land, 10 acre.
Mohan already answered that one. So Vince actually does have the.
Thanks.
Yeah. Mohan, one perhaps the last question. In the case where, as Anandan described, one co-owner wants to sell to an external party, does the other co-owner have to offer a price equal to what the external party was offering?
See, that's so far as it's market price, he doesn't have to match the third party's price. So there's a bit of a debate there. So in principle, you should try to match the price, but as far as it could be established that he's offering market price and the other person is offering market plus, I think the preemptive rights will still work. All
right. So I think in the north is that market is so illiquid. There is no market price. In Colombo, Colombo 7 properties are being sold all the time, so there's a market price. Here in Jaffna, that simply doesn't exist. So that would be interesting. Okay, so if there are no more questions.
Jagan, I put my hand up. Vasi.
But I saw you waving. Yes, please, Vasi.
Am I allowed to ask a question or what? Huh?
Do, Vasi.
All right. What is this gentleman's name, Jagan?
Moahan Balendra.
Mohan, my name is Vasikaran Rajudure from Australia.
Okay.
Now, two questions. First thing is, this Thesavalamai is for all 5 districts of the northern province. Is that right?
It's for the northern province, yes.
Like Kilinochi, Vaunia, Manna, Mullaitivu and Jaffna. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Okay. And the second question is, does the provincial council have powers or mandate to change the Thesavalamai law or not?
No, the Thesavalamai is, as I said, a custom law recognized by the Sri Lankan state, and the only place to change it is the Sri Lankan parliament.
Right, but the Sri Lankan government can change the law in such a way that the provincial council will have the powers to change it. Is that right or wrong?
Provincial council will have what power?
To change the Thesavalamai law.
No, you can't do that. It's a Thesavalamai law is like any other law in Sri Lanka. The only body that has the right to change it is the parliament.
Okay. The third and the final question is it easy to get the ownership of different lands in the northern province by one database?
I didn't follow your question.
Okay, what I'm saying is in 5 districts there are say 5,000 properties.
Right.
Does any agency have a database of what address, what property, what land kind of thing in the northern province?
I'm not sure that so after the war ended, the provincial officers, Grama Sevakas, the divisional secretaries were collating this information.
Right.
I don't think one person has. The military may have for their own reasons, but when we filed But there was a time they didn't. And when they tried to take over property in Jaffna, they went and put out notices which didn't meet law because they didn't know, they didn't have access to deeds of the people's land or the deeds to the particular land that they wanted to take over. But I think they, to some extent, they have managed to get these deeds because divisional secretaries wanted copies of deeds for people to establish it was their land, especially when people returned to their homes and farms and things like that after the war ended, mines were cleared and all that. So we have filed several cases in Jaffna for lands to be back, and we intentionally did not file copies of the deeds of court because we want the other side to use the information in the deeds to make it easy for them to take over the lands. So,
can I ask you one more question? Can I ask you one more question?
Let Jiva have a go.
Sorry?
I think Jiva has her hand up. So
Sorry.
Just very quickly,
Thank you, Mohan.
Just to follow up on one of Vasi's questions, just to clarify, the Thesavalamai law is applicable to people who live in Northern Province, but they can live anywhere, but it's applicable to anywhere in the country, right?
It is, yeah. So far as you you identify as a person who has a permanent residence in Jaffna, and you count yourself as one person who is governed by Thesavalamai, then it applies, yes.
So wherever you live in Sri Lanka, the Thesavalamai applies. Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yes.
Second question is, the Land Commission only takes into account what is in state land, right? Doesn't look after all these private lands.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert in that field, but from I mean, how looking at things, how it should be, Land Commission is only for state land. Yes, I mean, I need to look at the exact provisions to tell you with certainty, but I don't think private lands will come under Land Commission.
Okay. I know land that has been leased to private parties does come. So I'm not sure if in the Northern Province as well. So I'm not sure of other things. So
if it's state land and if it's leased, of course they would have purview.
Okay, thanks, Mohan. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, all right. So now I'm going to wind up. So thank you, Mohan. Very interesting presentation and a whole load of questions. So I'm sure that there are many questions.
Anything to make sure our people's rights are protected.
Yes, indeed. So great third birthday presentation. Thank you, Mohan. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
And thank you, Jagan, for hard work you put in. Without you, there won't be Jaffna clubs.
Yes. 36th, I think, meeting without missing a single one. All right. So as usual, good morning, good afternoon. Have a good lunch. Time for my evening drink and good night.
Thank you, Jagan. Thank you all, and happy birthday, Jaffna Club.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.